Hi everyone. Today I have someone very special. She's a friend of mine and she's a wonderful, wonderful woman. To me, she's a hero. She's very inspirational. This woman is Maureen Sullivan. She lives in Ireland. She's Irish and she has a story to tell to the world. Her story. And she wrote a book about her story that we are going to present. Maureen, hello, welcome. How are you?
Fine, thank you. And you?
I am very fine. I'm so excited to introduce your story to my audience. Maureen O'Sullivan, so you wrote a book which is named The Girl in the Tunnel. Can you show it, please?
Yes.
So The Girl in the Tunnel, it is your story.
Yes.
Could you please share with us what this book is about, please?
Yeah, well, I suppose I'll have to go right back into my childhood. My father died. My mother had two boys, and she was pregnant on me when my father died. So my father died in February 1952, and I was born in the August. So it was very, very difficult times in Ireland, and women were very downgraded in them years here. And she was a young widow. My mother would have been only 19. And the priest, this is what they did in them days. My mother wasn't the only woman. The priest introduced her to a man to get married. Maybe, I don't know, thinking that he would have made our lives better. I don't know. But my mother married him and went on to have 10 more children. So that was 13 of us all together.
Wow.
Yeah. And once his own children started to come along, he started to show the signs that we weren't welcome. He didn't want us in his life. We were kind of a burdens to him. He made our lives very cruel, hitting us, thumping us, punching us. Our ears used to be sore. We often had bloody noses, and it was a very, very tough, cruel childhood. And it's not a childhood I often look back on because I tried to block it out. Then at a certain age, I'm not sure exactly what age I was, but I'd say from 8 to 9, around that, he started to sexually abuse me. Which is a horrible thing on top of all the abuse and the beatings, and that to go on top was a very horrific time. And I think I started to become very unwell. And I was pretending to have pains in my stomach so that I'd go into hospital and I'd be safe in hospital. I didn't want to come home from hospital. Then at 12, I was just gone 12 when the nun called me, and this nun was very good to me, actually. She was a very nice nun, and she treated me very good and very kindly, and she said she was very concerned about me, that I wasn't mixing with the other children and that I wasn't concentrating in school, that I was very distraught. And she had these beautiful chocolate sweets that I'd never seen, and because we were very poor. And I started to open up and tell her my story. And then the priest was called, the parish priest was called, and he decided that I'd be better off going to a school in New Ross, which was supposed to be St. Aidan's. But I didn't. When I arrived there, the next morning, the day I told, the next morning I was taken out of Carlow, away from my granny, away from my brothers, or anybody that cared about me. I landed at the Magdalene Laundries, And when I went there, my mother bought me a little pencil case, which would have been very expensive in them days. It was one of the new pencil cases that was after coming out. And I knew when I handed them to them nuns that something was wrong. Because if you go to somewhere to see your new school, you're taken to the classroom. You're introduced to other children. But I wasn't. I was taken to the laundry where all the elderly women were.
Wow.
And my books was taken from me and my pencil case was taken from me and I never received them back.
Wow.
And I was just sleeping in St. Aidan's, I'd say for about 2 to 3 months. I'd sleep there, but I'd come over very early in the mornings and I'd clean a corridor. Then I'd go to Mass. Then I'd have my breakfast and then I'd work in the laundry all day. Finish at 5 o'clock. Our recreation time was making rosary beads and doing iron sweaters. It all depends on the orders that was in. If there was big orders for the rosary beads, you would stay at the rosary beads for nearly a week. If there was orders from America for the iron sweaters, we'd be at the iron sweaters all week. I'd say about 9 o'clock at night, you went to bed and you were just so tired, so exhausted that you just fall off to sleep. You didn't make any complaints. Going over to St. Aidan's for the first 2 months or 3 months, I was told not to talk to the girls in St. Aidan's, that I wasn't to communicate with them. And then on my way back over to work in the laundry, they were telling me I wasn't to talk to the women in the laundry. So we couldn't communicate. And then my name was changed.
Oh, wow.
She said, we will not be calling you Maureen. Your name is changed now. It'll be Frances here. We're calling you Frances. Now that took a long, long time for me to get that into my head. Yeah, it took everything from me. And I couldn't get used to it. It took me weeks to get used to it. And when you wouldn't answer to France, they'd dig you with the rosary beads into the side and you kind of leap off of the floor. You'd stand on your tippy toes with the pain of it, with the dart into it, you'd kind of stand up. Then I was put, after about 2 I was put in with the elderly women to sleep with them. I was one of the Magdalenes then, and so I always classed myself as Magdalene. And I was there for over 2 years. Anytime anybody came in to the laundry, said inspector or somebody, I don't know what half of the people was in there for, but I would be hidden in the tunnel. And I'd be left there until these people were gone. And I'm just thinking now, a lot of people have said that more than likely it was, but we don't know for definite either, nobody knows. It could have been inspectors pretending that they were doing their job and looking, because if they were doing their job, these elderly women wouldn't have been getting burnt. They wouldn't have been treated the way they were and people not see it. You would have to see it. And they're just probably covering up. But I would always be taken out of the laundry. They never seen me. And it makes sense, because why would a 12-year-old be doing in laundry? What would I be doing there? I shouldn't have been there. It was against the law for me to be working in laundry at the age of 12. I should have been at school. That was the Irish law. So they were basically, they could do what they liked with me. Nobody asked questions. My mother came to see me once. The visit was supervised. So who do you talk to? Your letters? If you sent out a letter, a little note or anything, it would be read. And if they didn't like what was in it, it'd be tore up and put in a bin. If anything came in for you, a letter came in for you, and they didn't like it, it would be tore up and put in a bin. So all communications was taken from you. And actually, I always say to this day that prisoners had more rights than we had.
Wow.
A prisoner could receive a letter, and a prisoner could write out a letter. We couldn't. We had no communication with the outside world. And my mother was a very religious woman. So how could you tell a religious person that was brainwashed? How could I, a little girl, was being accused of a crime? I committed the crime. That's the way they looked at me, that I committed the crime. That's why to this day I call it my crime, because I spoke out.
Yes,
so it was very, very harrowing times, and not only to take your education, to take your dignity, to take your pride, and to take your name, to strip you of your whole identity, of everything that you had. You know, so definitely they were looking at me as the sinner, that I caused all this. I brought it on myself. I mean, how cruel. And I'll tell you later if you want, or I can even tell you now. I sat down with a Good Shepherd nun, because I suppose I was so tormented in life, I could never understand why did they treat me like that. And I did ask her. It was my boss, Arnie Stevenson, my boss that I worked for. He was a man that believed in justice. If a wrongdoing was done, he was a great man for the right thing should be done and it should be brought out in the open. I was very lucky, because when I came back from England, if I had been working for a lot of companies, I wouldn't have been able to tell my story. So I was very, very lucky that this man lived in Northern Ireland and he believed in justice. And I always say it takes a few people to make a better world.
Yes.
So we wrote a letter to the nun, and we asked her if she'd meet up with us. And she did. And my boss said to her, now this is a nun that is telling us that she had no record of why I was there. They denied it in the first place, that I was never there. They were covering it all up, yeah? But we caught them, and how we caught them was, and to this day, they would still say that I was lying, until a clever solicitor said, where did you make your confirmation, Maureen? And I said, I made it in New Ross. He says, wow. He said, you say nothing to nobody, and you make a phone call, and you get your confirmation papers sent to you. And I did. So that was the proof that I was there. So then they had to admit it. Of course, then I was a troubled child. So, I mean, how dare I be troubled after what I went through as a young child? I should not be troubled. But anyway, on that day that we met that nun, she said something that will always stick out in my mind, and it would go to my grave with me. My boss said to her, why did you change Maureen's name? And why was she not allowed to play with the other children and go to school with the other children? And her answer shook us to the core. We will never forget it. She said, Mr. Stevenson, would you like, she said, have you got children? He said, I do. I have 2 daughters. He said, would you have liked your daughters to be playing with a child that was abused? And he was shocked. So he said, I don't understand. He said, I'm totally confused. And she said, we could not have Maureen playing with the other children because I was a soiled child. How cruel and how awful is that? How awful, what an awful, awful way to treat a child that had suffered so much, to treat me in that manner and in that way.
Because they didn't want you to speak to the other kids and tell them what was going on, because they had no right to do this to you.
So cruel, so very cruel. And I mean, all they had to do was enter me with a little bit of compassion, show me a bit of compassion, show me a bit of love and care that I didn't have in the home. Talk to me, educate me, and teach me how to go out into the world and how to deal with things. But no, it was slavery from early morning to late at night. And then I was shifted from there. I call it trafficked. They trafficked me from there to another laundry in Athy. And I had a visit there from my mother as well. Now, I was still called Frances there. That name, Frances, went with me wherever they sent me. That name came with me. I was there for over a year, and then I was trafficked to the blind school in Dublin, where there was little blind children and blind women was there. I loved it. I loved the blind women. They were so kind, so caring, so gentle. And the thing that shocked us was when my mother came to see me in Dublin, there was no supervision. The visit wasn't supervised. And we were in shock. And we were kind of nervous because we were so used to, the nuns didn't want me telling my mother anything. Not that it would have made much of a difference, because my mother would have taken their side. Oh, the old nuns wouldn't do that, and oh, you're exaggerating, and the nuns was good people. That's the way my mother looked at life. That's the way she was. She was brainwashed. And I said to my mother, I said, you know, my feet are so sore. I said, my shoes are too small. I said, my feet are killing me. I mean, my feet are damaged to this day from it. And she said, well, you know, you work hard. Because I was telling her I work early in the morning, that I clean all the corridors, and that I look after the blind ladies, that I change their beds. I wasn't working in a laundry in Dublin. I was looking after the blind women. And I said, there's little children here too, Mammy. I said, and they're lovely. And she said, is that nun coming in to sit with us? And I said, well, it doesn't look like it. We were quite shocked. So she said, well, I'll get you a pair of shoes. But I think now that at your age, Maureen, she said, you're coming up 16. She said, you should be getting paid. And maybe you could say it to the Reverend Mother when I'm gone. And I was thinking, well, could you not really say it to her? You're my mother. Yeah. And she said, oh, I wouldn't like to say anything. But she said, you can say that I have said that you should be getting money now. You should be earning money. So lo and behold, my mother, I'd say, was just left about an hour. And I went into the Reverend Mother. I knocked on her door and I went in. And I says, Reverend Mother, my shoes are really, really hurting me. And I said, I can't go on much longer with this pain in my feet. And I said, my mum said that I should be earning a wage now that I'm old enough. And oh, did she now? And I says, yes. So there was nothing else said. She said, okay, I'll speak to you later. I was brought up that evening at 7 o'clock and my case was packed and I was taken to the station the next morning and sent to Carlow with £5. They handed me £5.
Wow.
Back to the town, back to the home, which I couldn't go to. Not only did it take everything from me and strip me of everything, but I was left homeless now. I can't go back into that house.
No.
I'm 16 years of age. Now, where do I go? My granny has nothing in her house. She's a very poor woman and she's got nothing there. So I'm sleeping on a concrete floor because her little bed is a very poor little bed and the mattress is all down in the middle. So I'm sleeping on the concrete floor. I have to try and get a job. I have no money. How do I get a place to live? How do I survive in that world that they sent me back out into? After they're destroying every bit of anything that I had as a human being, they destroyed it. They stripped me of everything. the only thing I could think of was to go to a laundry. There was a laundry in Carlow, and I went there. Now, it's nice to be able to go into your work the next morning with your hair nice and your clothes clean. I mean, I was sleeping in the clothes that I went to work with because I was so cold. I couldn't take clothes off at night because it was too cold. So I worked there for a little while, try and get a bit of money together. And then my brother said, I'm leaving. He said, I'm getting out, I'm going to England. And I said, I'll come with you. I said, I need to get out of here as well. So there was a few of us that got together. We went over to England. Very difficult. When you go in and ask for a job, where did you finish your education? I couldn't say, well, I was in a Magdalene Laundry. Some of them mightn't have even known what I was talking about, and I didn't want to talk. All this suppressed, because when I did talk about it, look what happened to me. I was put into a place worse than a prison. Yes. So I didn't want to talk anymore. I got little jobs of cleaning in hotels, cleaning houses, any smaller, I wouldn't say dirty jobs, but because the people were very nice and everything. But I got very low-paid jobs. They were low-paid. And I tried to get a little bit of money together. But then I needed toiletries. I needed to buy things. As a young girl, I needed more than a young boy would need. It was very, very difficult. So the Irish Centre in London got us our first kind of room. It wasn't a flat, it was a room that I had to share with my brother and his mates. But it was fine. They were all lovely, they were kind, we were all good to each other. So I was getting very sick because I wasn't eating, I wasn't eating properly. And the doctor was very worried about me. He said my blood was like water and that I needed to be nourished more. And he was very concerned. So I decided, I said, well, maybe we should go home. Came home, back out to my grandmother's. No running water, no bathroom. It was a very old Irish house, nothing in it. I worked for a little while, made a few friends, and people start to notice that you're not looked after, that you're not caring for yourself. It was embarrassing in a small town. So I decided to go back to England. So I stayed there for 25 years then and got into a job, met my first husband, had my daughter, got my first flat, and started to become a part of communities that I was never a part of. And then my husband had a drink problem. He came from Northern Ireland. He came from the Troubles. Wasn't his fault. Lovely, lovely man. I never spoke to him about my past. I never let him know. And he passed away. And then I married again. But at this point, a lot of stuff started to flash back. I didn't know how to deal with it. And I had an attempt to take my own life. And in that trauma at that time turned out to be very healing for me in the end, because I was in England. If you do anything like that, you have to go for counselling. So I went for counselling, didn't know what that was, met a lovely lady, and she was able to get me speaking again, because I had everything really pressed and everything was inside me. I was holding everything in there. And so I got talking about it, and all of a sudden met a lovely healing lady, and she gave me a healing. And I don't ask me what happened. I can't explain it to everybody. I haven't got the words for it. I don't know. All as I know is, after this beautiful healing, I had my house up for sale. Me and my husband, we said we'd buy it. Just my second husband. We said we'd buy it. It was a council flat. You get it cheap if you're a council tenant for so many years. So that was a little lift up for me. And So I said, I'm selling, I'm going home to Ireland. He said, but you don't like Ireland. I said, I don't know why. I said, but I have to go. I must go back there. Of course, as I arrived back in Ireland, I'd say it was about 95, 96. All this started to break about the industrial schools, about the abuse in the industrial schools, about abused children being locked up in these places. And then it came up about the Magdalene. I kind of mentioned the Magdalene Laundry. I said, well, I was in an industrial school, but I said I was mostly in the Magdalene Laundry. And everybody was looking at me and said, well, you couldn't have been. You know, you were only 12. You weren't in the Magdalene Laundry. And I said, well, I was. And then, of course, when I got my confirmation certificate, the nuns had to give me where I was signed in. And they even covered that up. They signed me in a lot later than the time that I came. So we had a judge. Yes, instead of signing me in 1964, they signed me in for 65 because of my age. They were so clever. They were way ahead of their time. But a judge, we had another judge that had to come in and look at all that. And she told me, she said, you're telling the truth. You were there in 64. And she said, they cut our money, tried to cut us down on our money. The government did as well. So it was tough going. And the Magdalene story came out. And it was heartbreaking. There were stories I heard that were a lot worse than mine. Women that were locked up all their lives for simple little things that were called crimes, that weren't crimes. Nobody was ever punished for this. There was never any courthouses. These people were never taken to a courthouse. They were never punished or told that this was wrong. We never really got an apology from the nuns. I'm the only Magdalene that got an apology.
Wow. I remember a few years ago there was the scandal of the tomb babies.
Yes.
Can you quickly talk about this?
The tomb babies was a fabulous woman, fantastic woman, Kathleen Corliss, was sitting at her table one day, and she was kind of looking up the birth certs and the death certs and everything else. And she said, something doesn't add up here. There is something not right. Plus, there was two guys that was playing as children, and they found a skull, a human skull, or a bone. I'm not sure now which it was, but they found a human bone. And Kathleen's mind started working overtime. And with her own money, she went and she got all the death certs. So she said, well, where are these children, all these children buried? I think it's 780 children. Where are they all buried? So the two boys said that there was a big hole in the field, like a hole in the ground. And this is where they got the bone. So Kathleen investigated. So they are, actually, there's no polite way of putting this. Them children were buried in a shit pit. They just threw their little bodies into this underground, horrible, horrible place. And they're getting exhumed now. And Kathleen has been fighting this for years to get these children exhumed and put in to a proper burial ground and that get a decent burial. And at the moment, I think all that's happening. It's a very slow progress because Ireland doesn't want this tarnish on them. But it's out there now. It happened. Tume exists, and this has to be dealt with. I think I think it was the mother. If a woman was pregnant, she went into the mother and baby homes, and then after the mother and baby homes, when they took your children, and then the women were put into Magdalene Laundries after. Now there was a lot of women in there that didn't have babies as well. So in the mother and baby homes, which is much the same regime, this is very same, it belongs to the church. Some of these little children were undernourished. Some of them were given hot drinks that their throat, especially if they had a birthmark or something wrong with them, that their throat would be all burnt, so they wouldn't be able to eat. Yeah? Oh yeah, this has been proved. Yeah. A lot of these children, there's nothing on their death certificate why they died. The law is, if somebody dies, a doctor has to come along and he has to say why this child died. On a lot of the certificates, some of them can say the child maybe had pneumonia, the child had a certain disease, a child had this, but a lot of them had nothing, no cause of death. So you had the nuns covering up, you had the doctors covering up, you had the government covering up. Where did these poor women, how could they stand a chance? These people, the church owned them. The church was in charge here. The church took over from the government. They were doing all the dirty work for the government and getting well paid.
So the mothers were going there, were giving birth to their child there, and then they would separate from their child?
Yes. If the child was nice and healthy, and it was a healthy child, they were sold out to America. A load of Irish babies were sold to America. Yeah. Other countries, the majority was America. They used to go out in the planefuls out to America. Torn from their mother, torn from their nationality, torn from the wider family. It was just a cover-up. It was a shame. It was so brilliantly done. When you think about it, it was so cleverly done. You should be ashamed of yourself. You're pregnant. We'll cover this up for you. You may come in here, have your child in here, and we'll help you. I mean, these women thought they were getting help, and their children was taken from them. I mean, I don't know if you've seen the film Philomena Lee. Is
yes. Philomena.
Yeah, the film.
Fantastic, yeah. Fantastic.
Yeah, lovely film that is. And a lovely woman. I've met her a few times. She's a lady, and her son came back from America and died. He was dying, and he said he wanted his body flown home, that he could never find his mother, but that maybe one day she could find him. And she did, but it was too late. And he's buried in Roscrea. He paid big money to get buried there. I think there's one thing I think is very important that we should remember. Money was their God. Everything was about money. The laundries was about money. The rosary beads was about money. The iron sweaters was about money. There was lots of other things done in there. Lots of other iron cardigans, iron hats, all about money.
So the Catholic Church in Ireland was running slavery, and child trafficking to America.
Yes. Yeah.
Could you've mentioned a few times undergrounds and tunnels, that you were hidden in a tunnel. That intrigues me. What was this tunnel in the Neuros house, isn't it? Where was it going? Can you tell us about this tunnel, please?
Yes. From St. Aidan's, from the industrial school, there was a corridor down along. I would have called it a corridor because I could see out little windows. You could see the daylight coming in. So you get to a certain part of this corridor, and all of a sudden, you were underground in a tunnel. You'd leave the corridor and you'd go into this tunnel. And strangely enough, this tunnel went in under the church. All of a sudden, I'd be out into the Magdalene side where the Magdalene Laundry was. And this went on for nearly 2 months. We'd say 2 months it went on for. And then eventually I was put sleeping with the women in the laundry. But that's the way I used to come over every morning. And then at night time, a nun would bring me back over to St. Aidan's. And every day, every single day in them 2 months, the first words were, don't talk to the little girls when you go over here. I'd be too tired to talk anyway. I used to just fall into bed because I would be up a lot earlier than they would. They would have me up first thing in the morning so the girls wouldn't see me. And then on my way over in the mornings to the laundry, to the Magdalenes, they said, you must not talk to the Magdalene women. So there was no communication. There was no talking. And all of a sudden, one day out of the blue, this nun came up, caught a hold of me, run down the corridor, come on, quickly, and put me in this tunnel. It goes in under the church, it's dark. It had little kind of storing cupboards off of it. There was only about 1 or 2 storing cupboards, but I know there was tins of stuff, and there was sweets and biscuits in tins. And I never seen anybody else there. So they'd lock the door and they said, we'll be back for you. And the only thing they would tell me was the men in the suits was coming. And I don't know who the men in the suits were. We're thinking now, were they inspectors? But then somebody has looked into it and said inspectors wouldn't have come that often, because it was quite a lot of times they would hide me in the tunnel. So I went back down one day when I came home here and I said, I'm going to take a trip down here. I have to face this. Why was this terrible injustice done to me? Yes. So I said, I'm coming back down here. I'm going to face this. So I went in, and there was a lady there, and she was a cleaning lady. And I was looking around, and she said, are you okay? And I said, yeah. I said, I'm just confused. I said, I was here as a child. I said, I was a Magdalene. And she said, yeah. And I said, but I've come out onto this corridor, I said, out of a tunnel. I said, but I can't see the door now, the door that I used to go into to go back over to St. Aidan's. And there was a caretaker there. And he said, you are right, he said. That's all closed up now. Look, there it is. They have it all closed up. And I said, oh. I said, that used to be a door. And he says, that's right, that was taken down and it's all plastered to put something on it, and then they plastered it. So he said, but you're right. He said, the tunnel is in behind that. And this woman said to me, she's in the documentary actually, the first documentary that we ever done. We had no money, it was done very poorly, but still we were getting the word out there. And she said, I remember, she said, and I was only a child, and I remember people talking when I used to come in here. She said, my uncle used to work on the farm. And she says, I remember people talking about the girl in the tunnel. But she says, we thought that you were a rich child and that they were hiding you so nobody else could see you, that you belonged to somebody very rich. And I said, yeah, I wish. But I said, no, all as I was told was the men with the suits was coming. But I said, people have looked into it, and they said that the inspectors wouldn't have went in that often. They would only show their faces there on the odd occasion. So maybe there was people in for other reasons. Maybe it was big hotel owners that came in and wanted to see the women working in the laundry to give them the contract, to see what equipment they have and how much laundry they could take in. I'd say it was all, and then I'd say 1 or 2 times maybe there were inspectors. But I said the other times there were people that was coming in that wanted a lot of laundry done. Because don't forget that Magdalene women looked after all the guards' laundry, they looked after the soldiers' laundry, they looked after the hotels and all the big restaurants in them days. In them days, the restaurants had white tablecloths. Restaurants was very, they wouldn't have been all that common, but the ones that was opened would be lovely tablecloths on them, and because it'd be only very rich people that would be able to go into them. It's not like nowadays. So I'd say that them people were just coming in to see what equipment was there and what was the laundry capable of. How much laundry could they do? It would be contracts, taken in contracts.
And all this money, yeah. Where was this money going? I mean, the nuns were cashing up the money, but then it was going to the church, the higher, upper echelons of the church?
I would think so. I don't know, but I know they used to roll it up and put plastic bands around it and put it into boxes. Because if you were cleaning out the office, once we seen a box, it was a sweet box, and we seen the money all rolled up and hidden in the sweet box. Now, I don't know if it was a one-off, I'm not sure, but they probably had to give so much to Rome. They probably had to give so much to the parish priest. Of course, that had to be shared out. They had a farm for the food, milk the cows, they had their own milk, they had their own vegetables. I remember the farm man, when I was first starting to work in the laundry, I think it was only my second day. The first day I got there quite late in the afternoon, and they only showed me around it. And the second day, when I was working in the laundry, I wasn't able to reach up to the calendar to feed the sheets in. So I had to go down to the farm, and the farm man measured me to make a box for me to stand, like a stool for me to stand up on. So they had all their own vegetables, they had their own milk, they had their own butter. They had everything was so cleverly done. They had, I don't know what they bought from the outside, but I'd say it was very little.
When did the last Magdalene Laundry closed?
The last Magdalene Laundry closed, I think it was about 1993, 94 in Dublin. That was the last. I mean, imagine that in 1994, 93, 94 in Dublin, the last Magdalene Laundry. I mean, that's sad.
And the government was aware of this?
Of course they were. They will tell you that they weren't aware of this. And okay, maybe the young people in the government today, no, they mightn't have been aware of it. The government was aware of it. They knew it was going on. The outside world knew it was going on. People are not stupid. They knew that Artane was there, and all these places had big grey walls all around them. What were they hiding? Why wouldn't somebody just look in and say, what's going on here? Why would you have a place blocked in with big grey walls? You would have to ring a bell, and a nun or a Reverend Mother would come down and say, who are you? What do you want, before you'd get in there? Okay, I know they have to have some security where there's people. Yes, of course. But it was worse than a prison. Prison would have more people going around it than there did. We never seen anybody from morning to night, and the people that we did see that worked alongside us, they weren't even allowed to speak to us. That's how little they thought of us. We weren't even allowed to speak.
The Catholic Church in Ireland has had, until very recently, and still, such a tyrannic. It's like everyone is scared of the institution, and it's very how to say.
Yeah, they had. I think the problem. I'm not saying that there probably could have been a good few people in the church, but I do often think now, and people will say to me, well, I knew such a priest, and he was a lovely man. And I'm going, well, yeah, I'm sure he was, but why didn't somebody speak out? Why didn't these good people say something? Say, well, look at, I see what you're doing, and this is wrong. So I can't understand how these good people existed. I don't class them as good people. Now, I know the nun that I was speaking to here in school in Carlow. She was very kind to me. She did care about me. And I always feel in my heart that she meant well, because I believe that she thought I was going to school, because why would she cover my books? She covered my books the night before for me, and they were lovely. They were really done so nice. I was like, oh, I'm a posh child now. I have these lovely books, all covered, the pencil case that my mother bought for me. And the laundryman that brought me there, that's what I was taken there in, was a laundryman. And he said, you played with that pencil case. He said, from Carlow to New Ross. And in them times, there was no motorways, it would have been all the old roads. And it was a long journey, especially for a child. And it was a very long journey. And he said, you played with that pencil case. He said, you really love that pencil case, because I never had anything like that before. And I never seen it after that day when I handed over. I never seen it. But to get back to what I was going to say, that was the downfall. Everything was handed over to the church, and they were given all that power over the people. And nobody would question them. Nobody would you dare and question a priest or a nun in Ireland. They were given too much power here. It was wrong. It should never have happened. And I hope it'll never happen again. So I decided then to do my book. When you write a book or you come up against child abuse in Ireland, it's difficult if it's in a home and it happens in an institution. It's very difficult, but it's 10 times harder when you're talking about a family member, when it happened in the family. You're tarnished, your character assassinated, there will be lies made up about you, you will be called Maureen the liar. And that's what my stepfather, when he was grooming me, that's what he called me, was Maureen the liar. And these people, these paedophiles, they groom children, they frighten you, they put the fear into you. So they're safe. You're never going to talk about them. And by doing this book, I hope that if any little child is treated like that, that it do not go into any institution again, and this is covered up and hidden, and that they never be treated the way that I was treated. That's my hope in doing this book.
This is fantastic, what you are doing. You are very brave, and it takes courage to face your story, to face it, and even go public with it, you know. When did you decide to write this book? What was the event, the moment that decided you to write this book? What happened?
I'm glad you asked me that. I went out on radios and I asked for Magdalene women not to be ashamed and not to be embarrassed and to come forward and speak out. I said, don't be afraid. And I said, we'll come and we'll face the government. And the women would start ringing up, and they'd ring the Joe Duffy show. Oh yeah, I was in the Magdalene Laundry. And people started to open up. And that's all they needed, was just a little bit of encouragement. So done all that and was on radio shows and everything else. And then we got the apology. And I think what made me write the book was my family. See, my mother has 2 families. And yeah, they're hurt. Yeah, I understand. I don't want to hurt anybody, but I just want my hurt recognised, what was done to me. It should never have happened. And I hope it never happens again. And terrible things were said. She pulled a nun's veil off. Now, if I pulled a nun's veil off in the early 60s, it would be documented very well. You would never get away with something like that. So these terrible lies that was made up about me, I thought, no, I'm not going to leave these lies behind. No, I'm going to write my story, and my story is the truth. And I've backed up everything in my book. And that's what made me do it, was people tearing my character apart. If they'd left me alone, I would have said, right, fine, we've got the apology. We got a little bit of compensation, not much. We got a little bit. It was hard fighting. And I would have just walked away and left it. But no, they have to tarnish you and destroy you. And this is what this country is very much about. I've heard nurses saying they see things going on in hospitals. They said they're afraid to talk. They can't talk. I've heard people saying, like in the big offices, in the HSE offices, they see terrible things going on. We can't talk about it. We'll be destroyed. I mean, look at Maurice McCabe speaking out about what happened in the Gardaí. They destroyed his character. The women is coming forward now about the Irish Army, the way they were treated in the Irish Army. They were raped and abused. So it was appalling what was done. So these institutions have to be stopped. Their power of cover-up has to stop. And especially when it comes to little innocent children. So that's my hope for that. So I'm writing my book. I'm 70 now, and I thought, well, before I leave this world, I'm going to have my story out there, and I'm going to have it in writing. And my hope is it'll never happen to anybody again.
Well done. I'm so proud of you. Everyone is so proud of you. And since you've started going public and writing this book, have you seen some changes, like truth going out, women starting to speak because you inspired them?
Exactly. Yes, I have. I have a lot of women that will get my number and they will ring me and tell me their stories. I have a lot of people in Carlow, which is quite shocking. I'm shocked. I was knocked back for 6 of what, and this made me more determined of the abuse that has went on here in Carlow in families. And to this day, these people are frightened to speak out. They're not able to get justice. Their lives are destroyed because they're afraid to speak. They're afraid to talk about it. They don't know who to go to. They don't know who to tell. They don't know who to trust. I mean, this is shocking. In this day and age, we should be beyond this now. And we should be looking at it in a completely different way. I mean, I'm getting care still for the trauma that I suffered as a child. I'm still going for counselling. I still do certain programs to keep me. And of course, the wonderful Olivia Robinson was one of my first ladies to ever take care of me and encourage me. And she always encouraged me, kept at me, Maureen, do your book. Do your book. You must write a book. And when the time is right, and I said, I have a good reason, and the reasons why I'm writing it, I said, yeah. And I miss her. I miss Olivia. Very powerful, caring woman.
You know, sometimes I know people who lived through horrendous experience, such as you, and these people, in certain way, it's destiny, you know, because these like the divine something put them in these situations because they would be able to tell what was going on, you know, whistleblowers.
Yes, I know people think that that's mad, but no, I was just talking about this morning because I went for a bit of a healing this morning, and I was saying it to the lady that was doing the healing. I said, I know we find it hard to understand why would any child choose to come into a life like that, to come into such abuse, such pain and such agony. Why would you do it? But there was nothing about the Magdalene women in this country until I spoke out. Yeah, there was a reason for the Magdalenes to talk out and speak out about what happened. So I think that was my journey. That was the reason why I came back here.
Yes, it would seem so that it was a life mission chosen to go in there and see what was going on and tell the world and just collapse the whole thing.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. That's very important.
Well, you are a gift for Ireland and for the Irish victims of this horrendous abuse led by the Catholic Church, which got away with it quite. Oh, we forgive. Oh, so sorry, and got away. This is not okay. This is not okay. I mean, they are responsible, and there's probably governments behind this, running this, and trafficking children and etc. So it's not okay. And you're so brave.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
So brave.
And thank you for the opportunity to, for supporting my book and letting me tell my story. You're so kind.
Well, it's my honor. And I ask everyone to share Maureen's story and to buy her book and talk about it, please. I'll drop the links under the video where you can get her book. And what an extraordinary woman, an extraordinary life mission, Maureen. You are extraordinary and really inspirational. However you may suffer in life, there may be a higher purpose behind it, because you're supposed to tell the truth, and that's what you've done. What would be your message to the victim, the women and the children who survived these horrors? What would be your message of guidance for them, please?
Well, I think my message for guidance for them will be like the children that has been sold, is speak about your story, tell your story, don't be ashamed. The shame should not be on us. It should be on our government, and it should be on the church. Let them take the shame. It's their shame. It's not ours. Be strong. And I think the one thing I ask, if you feel or think that there's a little child being abused, we have to get strong and come to a part in life that where we can say, it's okay if you're wrong, it's okay if you make a mistake, but you're looking out for that little innocent child. You can always say, look, I'm not sure, but I think that there's something might be right here. People should be able to go in, say, a social worker, and say, can I talk to your child? Can I see that everything is okay? Or why should there be a big problem about this? If there's nothing to hide and this child is okay, well, fine. Open up your door, let your social worker in and let them look at this. And don't be afraid to speak out about it. If you think there's something wrong, I know it's hard, and it shouldn't be, and I hope that this can change. Just say, I have this feeling, I have no proof, but something could be wrong here. Do you think we could take a look? If everything is okay, powerful, that's wonderful. But what if something is wrong? And we're afraid to look at it, and that child is suffering. I think that's what we need to change, especially in Ireland. We really need to change this.
Thanks for being this inspiration, for bringing the truth forward and bringing together all the victims to stand up against this tyranny that has lasted for too long and that is now collapsing because the truth makes it collapse.
Yeah.
Maureen Sullivan, thank you very much.
Thank you. Bless you.